Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Danny Sinha. The strong winds and torrential rain brought by Storm Dennis have left their mark right across Britain. Hundreds of homes and businesses from South Wales to North Yorkshire have been flooded. Welsh officials described the scale of the floods as unprecedented, while police in Worcestershire fear a woman whose car was swept away by floodwater has died. Well, the extent of the flooding can be seen here. 507 alerts and warnings are in place across the length and breadth of the country. The more serious warnings are in the darker red. On the rivers Wye, Severn and Usk, there are 6 severe warnings. That means there is a risk to life. Well, our correspondent Julian Drucker is in one of the worst hit areas, Tenbury Wells. And Julian, people there assessing the damage.
Danny, they had one of the most unwelcome of guests over the weekend, and his name was Dennis. They are now clearing up the damage that he did, but there is real concern tonight that other towns, just like this one, could be hit in the next few hours.
It's the damage and devastation wreaked by Dennis. And in Hereford earlier, they were suffering the after effects as the waters continued to rise. This is how it looked in Tenbury Wells 24 hours ago when the storm passed through. In the treacherous waters close to here, a woman was swept away and is believed to have died. The levels had started to lower by lunchtime today as they began to deal with the aftermath, just as they've done after previous floods. We joined the owner of this Indian restaurant as he surveyed the mess for the first time.
Your first thoughts at seeing it like this?
Not again, but 2007 and now again. It's a shame, but we'll clean up and make the best of it. I think there should be an inquiry into why the flood defence work didn't work. Was it adequate? Was it done to the right standard? Or is it just something that we have to accept that it will flood every 10, 15, 20 years? We just don't know.
Oh, mate. In South Wales, Dennis brought floods and landslides over the weekend. The valleys there seeing their highest water levels for more than 40 years. And Hay on Wye became Hay in Wye. The floods were so severe that cars were swept away. Today, the Environment Secretary defended the government's response.
We've got 1,000 Environment Agency staff in the field working with local authorities around the clock to help communities. And the flood infrastructure that we have in place, the flood defence infrastructure, has worked as expected and has protected around 20,000 homes in this particular incident. I know that's no comfort at all, obviously, to the 400 homes that have been flooded.
It's definitely no comfort for those back in Tenbury Wells who took precautions like these flood defences but saw the waters surpass them.
Do you feel as if anything can be done to prevent against this sort of thing? Or...
Well, I suppose there's quite a few things that can be done, isn't there? But whether they'll do it, I don't know. They have done a lot of dredging and different things, but putting a wall around the entire town, I'm not quite sure what they could do.
When a month's rain falls in a few hours, it takes weeks and weeks to get back to normal. But the severe warnings remain in place, as many more towns like this could still be vulnerable. Julian Drucker, 5 News, Tenbury Wells.
Well, the city of York is enduring its second major flooding in just 5 years. Water levels on the River Ouse are rising and aren't expected to stop until tomorrow afternoon. Despite a multi-million-pound flood barrier and a big effort to distribute sandbags, residents there are anxious and asking whether enough is being done to protect their homes. Tom Barton reports.
Once again, businesses in York find themselves underwater. This city affected by flooding more than most. For some, it's even a photo opportunity. But the local MP says the government's taking the wrong approach to holding back the water.
We can't just build higher and higher walls, particularly in a beautiful city like York. We've got to properly manage the whole catchment, and therefore holding water upstream, planting and managing the uplands differently is the real sustainable solution for the long term, and that's what we really must see.
Memories in this city are still fresh from 2015, when hundreds of homes were flooded. One of the problems in 2015 was that this flood barrier failed. putting thousands of homes at risk from flooding. Well, since then, £17 million has been spent on refurbishing it. And today, happily, it's done its job. Today, water levels stayed lower than had been feared. But as climate change leads to more extreme weather, the Environment Agency is warning that it won't be able to protect every home.
We might have some tough conversations around the country about places that are just no longer defendable because it's just too big, it's too expensive, it just makes the place impossible to live in. So as we move through the next couple of decades, we're going to have some difficult choices about where we put our money.
Of course, knowing when and where storms will hit is vitally important. And today the Met Office said it was spending £1.2 billion on a new supercomputer to do just that.
We'll be able to have a much better understanding of where precisely the impacts will be. And if we have that, then people can respond to that, and the authorities that are helping them can also respond to that much sooner than they can at the moment. And that longer lead time gives time for action, and that action enables people to mitigate the risks and the impacts of the severe weather that they're feeling.
Even with better forecasts, preparing for and trying to prevent flooding is only going to get harder and more expensive. Tom Barton, 5 News, York.
Well, let's get back to Julian Druker in Tenbury Wells. Julian, the danger not over. Many flood warnings still in place tonight.
Yes, Danny, lots of worries around the River Wye, especially Herefordshire and surrounding villages. The rivers are at exceptional levels. The Environment Agency is saying it's the highest it's ever been, and their records go back 200 years. Hundreds of warnings stay in place tonight. And here there is the filth and the fury, that anger that more perhaps could have been done to prevent the flooding here. That restaurant owner you saw in my report earlier referencing the floods here in 2007. I remember being on this street 13 years ago, and it was just as bad, although the waters did persist for several days. This time they've gone down fairly quickly. That could be because they've dredged rivers and cleared drains. That may have had an effect. Lots of towns and villages, though, may have questions for MPs when this storm has passed.
OK, Julian Druker for now. Thank you.